I think it's safe to say that Minecraft is one of the most popular games of all time. From its wildly successful alpha launch back in 2010 through 15 years of updates and an ever-growing player base, Minecraft has remained one of the flagship titles in pop culture. It's also a game I bounced off hard the first time I played it. Back in September 2011, a friend of mine convinced me to give it a try. We were both poor college students, and I thought I'd enjoy the creative mode. I tried it for a few hours, but it really didn't click with me, and I ended up filing it away under the not for me tag. Now that I've solidly caught the survival crafting bug, I think it's time to go back and give Minecraft a second shot, and see if I can figure out for myself what's the deal with Minecraft. But before we hop into that, I want to give a quick shout out to Hackers Guild PGH. Whether you're into cybersecurity, video games, music, or even 3D printing, you're going to find something fun here. If you live in Pittsburgh, or even if you just find yourself visiting the area, be sure to drop by and check it out for yourself. And of course, for transparency's sake, they didn't pay me to say any of this, I just really love what they're doing and wanted to get the word out. Unlike me, my brother Connor has actually been a big fan of Minecraft for many years, and jumped at the chance to join me on my grand return to the game. Got off to a bit of a strange start, with the world generation spawning us in on top of a tree. Of course, in a game like this, getting dropped in on top of a tree just means you have less distance to walk before you can start that most time-honored of survival crafting activities. While punching trees to get that crafting ball rolling, I also stopped to grab some mushrooms. I remember struggling with keeping myself fed the last time I played, so the more I deal with that now, the easier it should be later. And once we've punched enough trees, I'm happy to see that I still remember the recipe for a crafting bench. Some parts of this game are just like riding a bike, I guess. The recipe search tool is a neat addition. One thing that kept pulling me out of the game originally was needing to stop and look up a recipe while I was playing. No longer needing to do that is, in my book, a genuine positive. And now I have to admit that I've buried the lead a little bit. We are not playing vanilla Minecraft. One of the things that got me interested in revisiting the game was seeing some gameplay of the Create mod. If you've been around long enough, you already know I am horribly addicted to factory sims. This mod adds a ton of new recipes and mechanics, as well as a brand new advancement path that we're going to follow to the best of our ability and see how far we can get. That all being said, our starting area is too hilly and lacking in resources to make a good home base, so we pick a random direction and set off to see what we can find. On the way, I have a chance to catch up with the dozen or so updates since the last time that I played, starting with these berry bushes that attacked me when I stumbled into them. My own clumsiness aside, they actually make a pretty good source of food. We also stumbled across what appear to be tide pools and some sea turtles. I may only have been here for about 5 minutes, but I would defend these things with my life. Another thing that I'm not used to seeing yet are these deep crevasses that dot the area where we spawned in. Caves were certainly a thing back when I originally played, but there's just something I find disconcerting about staring down a sharp 15-block drop. Especially when said drop contains a skeleton. Forgotten just how much those hurt when they hit you. Eventually, though, our wandering brought us to a wide, flat beach featuring a trench that I immediately fell into, and that seems like home sweet home to me. That ends up being a good choice, because on the other side of the trench is a crater full of ore and fall damage that we can make good use of. The world generation seems so much more varied than what I remember, and I have to say the sheer scale of some of the features is kind of fascinating. Of course, now that we've settled on a location to start building, we're going to need a ton of wood to get things rolling. Fortunately, between the spruce forest we started in and the large birch forest on the other side of the beach, that is one resource we should never be hurting for. While exploring, I stumbled across another strange bit of terrain that made me very glad we didn't have to worry about things flooding. It's nice to know that water is another resource we won't have to worry too much about, especially since I happen to know that water wheels and boilers are a major part of the mod. Speaking of create mod things, the major resource at the start is andesite. And having done no real research prior to starting this adventure, I had no idea what it looked like. Fortunately, I stumbled across a few veins of it while searching for some coal. I'm not sure why they made it look nearly identical to normal stone, but once I got used to spotting the difference in texture, it wasn't too hard to find. Andesite needs to be mixed with iron before it can be used for anything, so it's time for another important early step of every Minecraft playthrough. It took some work, but eventually we scrounged up enough to make some andesite alloy. I'm pretty sure over the course of my time in this game, I took about 2 full health bars of fall damage. The shift key would have gone a long way to stop that, but that would have taken more game sense than I had at the time. Of course, just because we had the materials we needed for andesite alloy didn't mean we knew how to make it. While we're trying to figure that out, I stumbled across what might just be my favorite quality of life thing out of any of the factory sims I've played. If you examine a recipe in the search tool, you can ponder the item to see a short video breaking down the item's basic use and special characteristics. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of setting up your machines without giving away too much. Eventually, though, we figured out how to combine everything together and got ourselves the first bit of andesite alloy. In other words, the real Create mod starts here. One of the consistent themes through our time in this mod was taking what felt like an obvious step, only for the advancement path to show us just how much we still needed to do before what we'd just done would be relevant. For example, copper is everywhere in the mod, and if you throw it in a smelter, you'll find out you don't need to worry about that until you can capture a blaze and set up a blaze burner. I've never run into a blaze before, but I know them by reputation just enough that knowing we'll have to capture one eventually terrifies me. That can wait till later, though. Our first step is setting up a water wheel, so we can start generating power for a press. I took the opportunity to build a small river just to see how the wheel would actually work. Water wheels in Create just need to be touching moving water on at least one side, so you don't have to worry about how much water they're getting. Once it's set up, I decided to celebrate by testing it in the most responsible way I know how, by slapping a turntable on it. Slowly rotating like a rotisserie chicken never felt so fulfilling. With that item crossed off the bucket list, I spent some time setting up a farm. It still surprises me what parts of the game I remember from my handful of hours spent playing over a decade ago, but I certainly remember bread being an important early game food source. With the farm mostly up and running, it's time to turn our attention back to getting a press set up. That means trying to figure out how to use a water wheel to power a machine. The thing is surprisingly finicky to get set up, mostly because I'm pretty sure we approached the whole thing backwards. In a normal factory sim like Tectonica, the wheel would snap to whatever you try to attach it to, and for some reason, I didn't even think to try that here. Cue several minutes of us attaching a variety of gears to the mess and scratching our heads before we finally just put a hand crank on it to make sure we knew what we were connecting the wheel to. Eventually, we managed to get everything working, and while I'm sure we could do it more efficiently now, it's all part of the learning process. The press works slowly, but it smashes iron and copper ingots into their respective plates. It's not much, but slow progress is still progress. Of course, once you hit a milestone in a game like this, you're already thinking of the next one, and for us, that's setting up an automatic smelter. While the normal smelters work just fine, Create allows you to run a fan through some lava to create something that can smelt any ore you throw in without needing fuel, as well as cooking food and disposing of trash. I thought I'd seen some lava earlier when I was exploring the crater, but what I actually saw were magma blocks. I don't know if they're mod only or something that was added to the base game I just wasn't aware of, but they create vortexes that pull things to the bottom of the water that they're in. And I definitely didn't almost die to that a few times. Fortunately, Connor ran across a random pool of lava left out for anyone to accidentally trip into, so we actually had that covered. Aside from the heat source, we also needed a way to power the fan. We could do another water wheel, but there is another option. We can build a windmill. Windmills generate power without needing a source of running water, but the trade-off is that the material cost to get it set up is higher. The main issue, and the one that we need to solve first, is that the sails for the windmill need wool. As luck would have it, Connor also found some sheep while he was out searching for the lava, so I ran out to see how much wool I could get. We'll want to drag these back to the base at some point, so we don't have to keep running out to them whenever we want to spin up a new windmill. Getting the basic windmill set up doesn't take too long, though getting it hooked up to the smelter took long enough that I had time to go and grab a second cup of coffee before we finished. A full power windmill takes about 8 times as many sails as this one, so if we want to get one working properly, we're gonna need a ton more wool. The small one's more than enough to power our smelter though, and after quickly smelting some copper, I can already tell this is gonna be something I'll miss on any non-Create servers I play. With our second milestone reached, I spent some time looking through all the Create recipes we've unlocked so far. I'm genuinely impressed at how much content this mod has, even accounting for the fact that I can only see a little bit of what's in it at the moment. With the longer-term goal of building a full-power windmill, we decide it's time to set up a pen for the sheep, so we can keep them close and away from the lava pit. In the short term, our next goal is an item that actually seems pretty critical for the mod. Engineer goggles allow you to see the force your power sources are putting out, and how much your machines are drawing. Information that'll only become more important as our factory grows. We have most of what we need to make them, but they require gold sheets, so it's time for another excursion underground to find the gold we need. The logical place for us to start digging is that giant crater in our backyard for the head start it'll give us, though it still takes quite a bit of digging from there before we finally stumble onto a cave. From what I remember, caves existed, but they weren't quite as elaborate the last time I played the game. The cave has an entrance back to the surface, so I mark it out with torches, just so it'll hopefully be easier to find later if we need to. Exploring the cave quickly turns up a bit of gold and a lot of iron and coal. Even if we didn't specifically need the gold, I have a feeling we would have ended up down here sooner rather than later just for the other materials. Following one of the paths in the cave leads to a second, much larger cave. Like the crater on the surface, the sheer scale of the terrain is impressive to me. The new cave has an abandoned mine, which is a great find given I happen to know Create uses mine carts to transport materials and machines. Probably not going to get that far this time around, but that is not going to stop me from hoovering up every track I can lay my hands on. We plan to explore as much of the cave as we can on this trip, so we take a moment to set up a little forward base to ease the inventory management and craft more torches, because no matter how many torches you have, it is never enough. The abandoned mineshaft splits into a few different paths, one of which leads directly to another large cave that leads even deeper underground. I think I finally get all the jokes I've heard over the years about going mining and popping back up 5 hours later. This cave just does not seem to end. Taking one of the other paths leads to a massive main chamber that opens directly onto the surface, about 30 blocks from the pen we set up for the sheep. 2 hours of spelunking and we have barely moved at all on the map. The long mining trip gets us more than enough to craft the pair of engineer goggles and fuel the next several things we plan to build. First things first is that full-sized windmill though, so it is sheep shearing time. We start building the windmill on the side of a cliff for space and aesthetic reasons, but due to how actually placing machines work in the mod, we need to craft a wrench. Wrenches allow you to rotate blocks along the axis you're facing, which is incredibly useful since it means you don't need to break them and replace them until they're facing the way that you want them to. If you play this mod for yourself, I recommend getting these as quickly as you can. While perusing some of the other Ponder tutorials, I actually missed something that will come back to bite us in several hours. Some machines need to be powered by a source rotating at a certain speed. I actually really like this idea because it makes you think about what power sources you're using beyond just making sure that you're generating enough force for your machines. As an example, pulled completely at random and not at all from future experience, this means that machines like the mixer can't be used with water wheels, at least not the ones we have access to. While that doesn't matter a ton for this moment in our playthrough, it is something that I would recommend keeping in mind if you decide to play this mod for yourself. While Connor spends time working on the big windmill, I decided to start working on a grinder. It doesn't have any special requirements, so a water wheel will work just fine for it. And because I refuse to make things easy on myself, I also decided to build it on the side of a cliff. As they say, what fall damage doesn't kill you just makes you stronger. A short time later, Connor gets the full windmill working. It produces about 16 times the power that the water wheels do, so we've got a lot of room to play with. Sadly, attaching a fan to the bottom does not make it take flight, but given how much went into building it, that's probably for the best. The first thing we decide to do is set up a washer. It functions the same as the auto smelter, just if you replace the lava with water. The tutorial notes it as a quick way to process gravel, though I'm sure there are other uses for it we just didn't find. With the farm and the grinder up and running, it turns out we can throw wheat in to make flour. So far this mod has done a great job of scratching the itch that every good factory sim does. The one where you ask yourself, how does this work? And then see what happens. Asking ourselves that question concerning the flour that I made leads to dough, which itself unlocks a new cake recipe that takes a lot fewer materials than the normal one. Making a cake used to be the milestone in the early game many years ago, and it's something I've never actually done myself, so I have a new goal. and after gathering up a few more materials, I make my first ever Minecraft cake. With the washer only taking up a fraction of the windmill's power, we decide to use some of the rest in the most responsible way we know how, giving ourselves motion sickness. With that unfortunate decision behind us, I discover that the washer can be used to turn flour into dough. I feel like you can fully automate cake production in this mod with enough practice, but that'll have to be a project for another day. We still have plenty of power to spare, so we also decide to set up a smoker, which is the third thing you can do with a fan. Instead of lava or water, a smoker runs air from the fan through a fire. We'll need to find something that burns forever once lit, since most things either extinguish or burn up after a few seconds. Netherrack's the only thing I know of that burns forever, so that means we need to go to the Nether. We don't have diamond picks to build the portal the normal way, but fortunately Connor knows a tricky and inconsistent way to use that pool of lava from earlier to make it. If I had to guess, it involves building the shape of a door one block at a time, while juggling water and lava blocks. But unfortunately I didn't actually see the thing happen, so that's just a guess. Stepping through the portal leads to my first ever trip to the Nether. It's a definite shift in atmosphere, but a zombie pig man forces us out right after we manage to grab some netherrack, and I didn't get more than one arrow in the face. The smoker comes together fairly quickly, though the only thing it seems to do at the moment is turning kelp into conveyor belts. We really don't have a need for conveyor belts at the moment, but that's a pretty important part of every factory sim, so we definitely will at some point in the near future. Now, we could just go swimming to grab some, but that's not our style. Instead, we're going to use the massive pile of copper we've accumulated in our mining endeavors to make ourselves some dive suits. Getting the suits together takes no time at all, though the air tanks do charge in real time. While they're getting ready, we decide to head back down into the caves one last time to see if we can find some diamonds. We managed to find a few amid the pools of lava we're practically standing on top of, and by the time we get back, everything is set for our dive. The air tanks provide a full 15 minutes of air, which we have absolutely no need of at the moment, but I would put good money on that being important somewhere down the line. The weighted boots are also nice for getting down to the bottom quickly without having to swim down. Again, not something that we need for what we're working on, but definitely something I can see being a necessity later. Our base ended up being practically next to a kelp forest, so we're able to gather entirely too much kelp in a matter of moments, and the smoker helps turn it into plenty of conveyor belt. All things considered, I think we picked about the best home base that we could have. Our time here was coming to an end by this point, so while we try and fail to get that mixer set up, let's loop back around to the question from the start. What's the deal with Minecraft? Honestly, I think I get it now in a way I really didn't my first time around. My second time with the game was a great time, even barely having any idea what I was doing. And aside from that, the game feels very similar to how Garry's Mod or Team Fortress 2 did when I first played them back in 2010. With a reported 204 million players at time of writing and thousands of public and private servers, Minecraft is as much a social space as it is a game. Additionally, it's somewhere where if you're so inclined, you can learn game design or maybe even a little bit of coding. Add that into the seemingly endless mods, adventure maps, and the creativity of the fanbase, and I'm really not surprised the game has stayed on top alongside things like Roblox and Fortnite. As for Create itself, I think it's safe to say that I love the mod. For a while now, I've been really wanting a factory sim that embraced more of a low-tech aesthetic with water wheels and windmills. I've heard that style referred to as solar punk, but I have no idea if that's the right term for it. I want to revisit this later, so I think I'm going to shuffle around my schedule and come back to this later in the year. And that brings us to the end of the time that we have for now. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and a comment, and maybe check out this other video where I talk about game music and my top 10 game soundtracks. Or maybe this one where I recount my adventures in a different survival crafter. And be sure to tune in next time when I continue revisiting games that I haven't played for a very long time. Though the next one's gonna be one a lot of you have asked me to play. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did making it, and I'll catch you in the next one.